Before I properly get into this video, I just want to say that this will include massive spoilers for No Way Home. So if you're clicking on here without seeing it, I advise you to click off now before I get into it. Spider-Man No Way Home is finally here, and as many of us thought, and it was probably the worst kept secret in Hollywood, we have the return of Toby Maguire and Andrew Garfield amongst Tom Holland. A question which has always been debated amongst many is who has portrayed Spider-Man or Peter Parker the best? For me, it's always been a hard decision, and now that we have a film which not only gives Tom Holland his third film, Andrew Garfield his third film, and Tobey his fourth, we all have them all together, so it's great to see them side by side, not just in terms of fan service, but to compare them and how they're similar and how they're different. Today I'm going to give my opinion on who I think is the best Spider-Man and the worst, but by saying the worst, they're not bad because they are still great in my opinion. And just for the record, this is only including live action Spider-Man actors, and when I say that, I don't mean the one who's in the live action TV show from about the 90s, I think. Only Toby Maguire, Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. So without further ado, let's get into it. As I mentioned, Andrew Garfield being in last place does not mean he was bad, because I actually really like him, and I think he's now starting to get the praise he deserves after his performance in No Way Home, because even in Amazing Spider-Man films, I thought he was solid. It's just because those films weren't great, so his performance kind of went under the radar. However, the reason I have him in last place is simply I just don't buy him as Peter Parker as much as I do with the others. He certainly brings a different kind of Peter Parker, which is what I liked. I enjoyed that they didn't just, try and reproduce Tobey's Peter Parker after his success. They tried to do something different. Not all of it works, but for the most part, Andrew Garfield tries to make it work, and he's such a phenomenal actor. Funny enough, I get compared to him a lot in terms of looks. I don't see it, but I get compared to loads of different people who haven't had conversations prior to it. But he is one of my favourite actors, so having him on this list as a Spider-Man and in last place shows that it is such a tough list. But one difference from the others, which I noticed, especially coming off of Tobey Maguire, is Andrew Garfield is much quippier and has a lot more one-liners, which is what Spider-Man is also famous for in the comics, about his one-liners in battle. I mentioned his films weren't great, especially the second one, but him and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy were the kind of the bright light coming out of them. I thought those two portrayed the best romantic relationship Peter Parker has had in a movie. They really drew you in emotionally and made them feel like a real couple. I guess they were at the time, but in this film it felt real, and that's why it was so painful when Gwen Stacy did die at the end and you could see how broken Andrew Garfield was. It was also just as emotional as he got that redemption in No Way Home when he saved MJ from the same fate. Now, he still had more to his story, as you could see by things attempting to be set up in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and to be honest, that could still happen after rumours that they're developing an Amazing Spider-Man 3, which, I'm just taking with a pinch of salt at the moment, but I could see it certainly happening sometime down the line. I think he's a great actor. He portrayed Peter Parker in a different way, which I like, but he is in last place because the other two on this list just did it a little bit better, in my opinion. While I love Andrew Garfield and thought he did a good job, the real tough decision about this list was these top two. Just like Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland's one of my favourite actors. It was really difficult trying to push the bias aside, but I think from a critical point of view, and I think this is the one that makes most sense. What I like about Tom Holland's performance is he has this great charisma and naivety about him, which makes sense because I'll talk about it in more detail later on, but Tom Holland's Spider-Man, since we've been introduced to him in the MCU, has always had a role model. Tony Stark, when he died, you could see he struggled without him when he made wrong decisions with Mysterio. And then after that, in this film, for the most part, it's either Aunt May or Tobey's Peter. And as this takes place in the MCU, which I don't blame Tom Holland at all for, he didn't really ever feel that kind of independence, and as we never got that origin story, it was hard to see what he was like before becoming Spider-Man. While we get an origin of him of sorts in the new animated show, it actually looks like this trilogy of Spider-Man films in the MCU has been Tom Holland's Peter Parker's origin story, as we see by the end of this film, he kind of starts with a clean slate, no one knows his identity, and it just seems like the independent start which Tobey had. So I mentioned there's always been that naivety about him. No Way Home is Tom Holland's real standout performance as this character, as He goes through a lot of emotions as he struggles with, you know, the consequences of people finding out his identity and the loss he goes through, as well as the selfless decision of making everyone forget who he is, including his girlfriend and his best friend. And while Tom Holland has been my number one at some points over the past few years, he really did progress a huge amount and matured nicely in this film. However, if it wasn't for the inclusion of number one pick in this film, he probably would have gone first place. As I mentioned in my ranking of the Spider-Man films, you want to watch it up there. I grew up with Tobey's Spider-Man movies, and for me, as well as watching these films when I was young and reading the comics, he's always been Peter Parker to me, and to this day, he still feels the most like it. When you think of classic superhero origin, I always go back to Tobey's first performance as Spider-Man, as we're first introduced to Peter Parker as this sort of nerd who doesn't have too many friends, and even once he gains powers, he does get a bit more attention to him, but he still remains the same nerdy self, so I like that it didn't change who he was too much. It just added to it. And that's where it feels most accurate to me, because when he's not saving the city or the civilians, he's still this nerdy guy who you see. And as we really go through his origin story, he just feels the most grounded as well. Criticism I forgot to talk about in Andrew Garfield's bit is that his origin was too rushed, in my opinion, of the process of how he made the suit, how he adapted to his powers, and that's not his fault at all, it's just the way the movie was made. But here it allowed Toby Maguire to fully express the origin of Peter Parker, and I think he executed it flawlessly. You look at moments in Spider-Man 3 with emo Peter and you can say, you know, that's not really Peter Parker, but Toby Maguire as the actor, even there, he gives it his all, so you can't hate on him for that, because if anything, it's one of his most iconic moments as Spider-Man. But in No Way Home itself, the minute he comes in, the politeness he shows, it's just classic Peter Parker to me, the kind of awkwardness and at points hesitation. But one thing I really liked about this film, which many people, funny enough, were talking about before No Way Home's release, is Tobey's role as a mentor. Now, I think we all expected that to happen here, but I just liked how he taught Tom Holland. You know, Tom Holland had obviously experienced loss with Tony Stark and Uncle Ben, although we haven't seen it. Tom Holland had never been to this dark of a point, and Tobey Maguire, who knows, who's been there, was able to prevent him from doing anything he would regret. So to me, Tobey Maguire just feels the most grounded and realistic, therefore the best Peter Parker for me. However, all three of these actors are brilliant and have all done amazing jobs, so by having the other two not in first place also hurts me, so I need to give big credit to them. Please let me know down below what your ranking of these three actors. I'm eager to know, as it's a difficult list. I think the addition of No Way Home really did bring up the quality in all three of these actors, so that even made it more difficult to rank. But I can't lie, this is the first time on my channel that I'm actually talking about No Way Home spoilers, even though I've covered it in 2 videos already. Our reaction to it was mind-blowing. As soon as, I won't lie, when they first opened the portal for Andrew Garfield, I was a bit slow to realise who it was, even though I knew they'd be in it. It really did blow my mind, as well as the return of other characters, and I love all three of these actors and I love all three of these characters, or I guess you could say they're one. With these rumours of a third Andrew Garfield film, as fans are really taking a liking to him this time around. Would I be happy to see his film? Absolutely, but it feels a bit odd making it this late. But of course, I'll be the first one there, like many would try to. I'm all for it. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, it would really mean a lot. And I hope to see you in my next video, which I hope to cover more of Spider-Man No Way Home. I was thinking of the villains ranking of all of Spider-Man and the suits. We'll see, because I'm very, very busy and there's a lot of effort going into that. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in maybe one of those videos.